Well, let's queer up courts. Court finds Maryland parents can't challenge the rule that stops schools from outing LGBTQ plus students. A federal appeals court has ruled that a group of parents cannot challenge a Montgomery County Public Schools policy advising teachers and staff not to out trans-identifying or gender-nonconforming children to their parents. The Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled 2-1 that 3 parents in Montgomery County, Maryland, lacked standing to challenge the policy because they had not alleged their children were transgender in the first place. The policy in question, which the Montgomery County Board of Education adopted for the 2020-2021 school year, permitted schools to develop so-called gender support plans for trans-identifying or questioning students to ensure that they feel comfortable expressing their gender identity. Under the policy, school staff is expected to create a plan governing a student's preferred names, pronouns, participation in athletics or school extracurricular activities, and the restroom and locker room facilities that they are allowed to access. The policy also requires teachers and counselors to gauge the level of support a student receives or anticipates receiving from their parents if such information is disclosed. While ideally, the gender support plans work toward the inclusion of the family, school staff may choose to withhold information about the plans if a student's family would not support their coming out or socially transitioning. Well, is all of that clear as mud? Because it's clear as mud.
Yeah.
First, I would suggest that even in its bit of ambiguity of the ruling, it's certainly in Montgomery County and in Maryland way better off than where we are here in Florida. So we could pay attention to what is going on in Maryland. Their intent is to provide some level of protection for trans and non-conforming gender identification in Maryland. And the court is saying that those that are trying to stop that interpretation don't have legal standing to challenge the law. That's really what this decision 2-1 by the federal court is saying.
I actually disagree with the opinion. I read the dissenting opinion. It was 2-1, the one, which is saying that they do have standing as parents because the rule is blanketed to all students. So you don't need to know if somebody's transgendered or not. The rule, I'm going to say law, the rule is applied to everybody. So I do think that they have legal standing, and the courts decided to punt and just say, we're not going to rule on this. And I think they should have taken the case and ruled on it. And the ruling should be that basically in any kind of social work, when you have a school counselor and they suspect that there could be potential abuse going on in the home, they don't have to report immediately to a parent to say, oh, your kid says that you smacked them, in the face, or, they investigate first. And this rule does not say that they're excluding the parents from it. They just say that we may take a little bit of time. It may take a day or two to understand what is going on, just like any social worker would do. So I think they should have taken the case. I do think that they have standing, and I think they should have lost. And
I'm curious, in terms of the minority opinion that you're reading, the one of the 2-1 of the decision, why is that judge suggesting that they're just basically punting, that the majority decision doesn't want to deal with the issue? Did they suggest why the judges are?
I didn't. I think I read an abridged version of it, so he may have said something more about it. But from what I read, the excerpts of it, the basic idea was that of course it applies to all students, regardless of whether if they're transgendered or not.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I agree with Trinh. I think the court really should have picked this up, and so that we could get an affirmation, not just kicking the can down the road. Because I'll tell you the kids that I really feel scared for, and that's the ones whose parents are going to have standing. The ones who are going to be able to say, my child was gay, or my child was queer, or my child was trans, and you didn't tell me about it. those are the kids that are going to be in a world of trouble because they are not going to have a support system. The case that a court, either in Maryland or somewhere else with a safe law, they're the ones that are going to bear the brunt. And my God, I feel so bad for them.
The effect of this decision, I think, overall, is really just pushing gay and trans kids further in the closet. And we have research going back to the 80s moving forward. My master's research was in suicide rates for gay and trans for the period of about the 90s or so. And how closeted a population has to be is in direct proportion to the number of people in that community that end up taking very drastic measures to escape, including suicide. At one point, those rates were 50 times what they were for a binary straight person. We got to about as good as 4 to 5 times, which is still horrible.
Yeah.
This pushes us back towards that 50 number.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Being a parent of 2 children and having gone through navigating schools and safety, my older son was bullied constantly, and it was always a struggle dealing with the administration. And we also rallied and got the school board to add sexual orientation and gender identity to their non-discrimination policies, not only for students, but also employees, because my wife at the time worked for the school board. So that was a huge win for us then. Obviously, it doesn't mean that much today. Hopefully it will in a little while again, but I can really relate to navigating that as a parent is difficult. And so I understand why a parent might step up and say, wait a minute, if something's happening with my kid, I want to know about it. But to your point, right, like it's very similar to a situation where there's an allegation of abuse and they have time to investigate and figure out, is this going to put the child at further risk or not? So I think it's good that it stands, but we should have gotten affirmation. I agree.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ+ community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.